Kyla, and welcome back to the Infinite Library. And I'm doing a little bit of a weird angle today because we're going to be going on to my fourth part of my Reading the Goodreads 2023 challenge. And that means I get to pick what books I'm reading for it. So I've got my laptop here, and we're going to be looking together at the two categories that I'm going to be reading in this video. So, for anyone that hasn't actually seen this project before that I'm doing, there are links below and links here to the first part of that challenge. But essentially, last year, which was 2023, I'm reading books from every single genre in that challenge. Whether or not they're genres that I actually like or not, because I'm just curious to see what ones they pick, what ones that win, if I think they're actually really good or not, really. I'm just kind of being a bit judgy of Goodreads. Can't blame me, really. So, I've already done 6 of the categories so far. In my first video, romantasy versus fiction. In my second video, I did YA fiction versus history, YA fantasy versus non-fiction. And in this video, we are going to be looking at mystery and thriller versus memoir and autobiography. So interestingly, these are two genres that, whilst they aren't in my favourite set of genres, I do actually quite like reading from. I've only recently gotten to mystery and thriller books, like in the last year or so, but I've been actually starting to enjoy them quite a lot. And I like reading memoirs. I always have liked reading memoirs, especially if there are people who are interesting. So I think this is actually going to be quite a tight one for this video, because I think there's going to be genuinely a lot of competition. So without further ado, let us have a look at the books in question and pick what we're going to be reading in this video. Okay, so here we are looking at the categories, and we're going to start with Best Mystery and Thriller, and the winner with 86,468 votes was The Housemaid's Secret by Frida McFadden. Now, this is the second book in a series, but I actually have read the first book in this series. I haven't read it at the time of filming, so I don't know if it's actually good or not. I feel like I will actually quite like it, but this is either going to be me going into this having liked the first book or having hated it. I will update you once I'm actually later on in the video and I'm reading this, because at the current I don't know if I liked it or not. But let's have a quick look at what this is about. This is obviously going to be a little bit spoilery, I feel, because this is the second book in a series. It is about a woman who is a housemaid. Haha. It literally doesn't even say what her name is in this title at all, which is insane. But she gets a job cleaning a stunning penthouse at a family called the Garricks. She's very happy there, it seems like. I can work here for a while, stay quiet until I get what I want. It's almost perfect, but I still haven't met Mrs. Garrick or seen inside the guest bedroom. I'm sure I hear her crying. I notice spots of blood around the neck of her white nightgowns when I'm doing laundry, and one day I can't help but knock on the door. When it gently swings open, what I see inside changes everything. So yeah, that actually sounds quite interesting. It looks like she is going to be, there's like some sort of abusive relationship going on from the sound of it between the Garrick family, and from the looks of this, she's going to try and protect the wife, but she also has a secret of her own, which she's trying to keep safe. So it sounds interesting. It's like a psychological thriller kind of thing. So yeah, I'm not mad about that. It's very popular. It's got a lot of ratings. And even a year later, it is currently sat at a 4.25. And it released in February last year. It's like over a year since it came out. It's actually still a very good rating. So that will be the first one I read. Let's have a look at the second book. So this is Lisa Jewell, and None of This Is True, with 73,000 votes. I've definitely heard of this before. So it's currently sat at a 4.13. Quite a lot of ratings here. So this is an established author, which I believe Frida McFadden also is. And it's another psychological thriller about a woman who finds herself the subject of her own popular true crime podcast. Oh, that's very fun. So, celebrating her 45th birthday at a local pub, popular podcaster Alex Summers crosses paths with an unassuming woman called Josie Fair. Josie, it turns out, is also celebrating her 45th birthday. They are, in fact, birthday twins. So they bump into each other again a little bit later, and it turns out Josie has been listening to Alex's podcasts, and thinks she might be an interesting subject for her series. Josie's life appears to be strange and complicated, and though Alex finds her unsettling, she can't quite resist the temptation to keep making the podcast. She realizes that Josie has been making secrets and is trying to get her way into Alex's life and her home. Oh, it's like an obsession thing. And yeah, this ends off with who is Josie Fair and what has she done, and then she disappears. So this sounds very interesting as well. I feel like I've heard some people have not been loving this recently. I feel like some people have been getting around to it. Yeah, like Lala's review here is a 2-star, officially swearing off this author. Kristen did give it a 4-star. So I feel like this is a Marmite book, to be honest. I feel like people either really like it or they don't like it. So yeah, I guess I'll find out which end of the spectrum I fall on. So Riley Sager, The Only One Left, is the third one, and I have already read this book. I read this when it released last year. I think it was the very first time I read Riley Sager, and I wasn't a fan of it, I've got to say. I didn't love it. It was just kind of okay, is how I felt about it. I think I liked the intro more, and then I just kind of lost interest as it went further on, so I didn't love this. I have actually since read another Riley Sager, and I did like that one more than this one. But yeah, at the moment, I've obviously read this one and didn't love it. Next book is the Richard Osman series, his First Day Murder Club mystery, and this is book 4. And I have not read any of this series, so I'm not going to be reading it. But I believe it's about old people who are solving murder mysteries or something. Then we have Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers, and I've heard really good things about this one. So this one is definitely going to be an option, to be honest. In fact, we're just going to straight away add it to my want to read list. So this is basically about an old lady who is called Vera Wong, and she likes doing detective work on the internet, aka checking up her son to see if he's dating anybody yet. But then she wakes up and finds a dead man in the middle of her tea shop, and she has to try and catch the killer, basically. And I've heard really good things about this. I think it's supposed to be good. This is the same author as Dial A for Aunties, which is also a book that I think I do want to try read at some point. It's like a fun, I want to say it's a rom-com, but basically someone dies at a wedding, I think, and it's up to our lead and her, like, a whole bunch of, like, aunts to try and solve the issue, or, like, cover it up or something. I can't quite remember exactly, but it sounds like a good time. And this one sounds like a good time too. It's at a 4.04 at the moment, so this is definitely an option for my third one, I think. Then we have Bright Young Women, which I'm also very interested in. This has been on my radar for quite a while, and this is a historical fiction, actually. And I believe this is based on a real story? I can't quite remember. Yes, inspired by the real-life sorority targeted by America's first celebrity serial killer in his final murderous spree. So it's set in January 1978. A serial killer has terrorized women across the Pacific Northwest, but his existence couldn't be further from the minds of the vibrant young women at the top of sorority on Florida State University's campus in Tallahassee. So this is basically, I think this is a story of Pamela, who is the president of the sorority, and she is like the only one that survives this killing, basically. And it looks like there is also some stuff about another woman who lives in Seattle called Tina Cannon. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I guess that their stories kind of interconnect. Yeah, 2 women from opposite sides of the country who become sisters in their fervent pursuit of the truth. So yeah, that sounds really interesting, honestly. I'm super interested in that. So that is definitely an option as well. This one is slightly higher rated, but I'm very intrigued by Bright Young Women. Okay, then we've got Stacey Willingham, All the Dangerous Things. So, 1 year ago, Isabel Drake's life changed forever. Her toddler son Mason was taken out of his crib in the middle of the night while she and her husband were asleep in the next room. With little evidence and a few leads for the police to chase, the case quickly went cold. However, Isabel cannot rest until Mason is returned to her, literally. So, she's not sleeping well, and she's just obsessed with finding him, basically. And she agrees to be interviewed by a true crime podcaster, but his interest in her past makes her nervous. Oh, and she starts to doubt her recollections of the night of Mason's disappearance. So that sounds like another domestic thriller, to be honest. And honestly, I don't think the premise is quite as interesting as some of these other ones. so I don't think I'm going to be picking that one. Then we've got Homecoming by Kate Morton. I actually really do want to read this one, but I want to read this for a different project, so I'm not going to read that for this video, but I'll tell you what it's about anyway. So it's actually no historical fiction. It's set in 1959 on Christmas Eve, Adelaide Hills. So on the grounds of a mansion, a delivery man makes a terrible discovery, a police investigation is called, and becomes embroiled in one of the most shocking and perplexing murder cases in the history of South Australia. And then we fast forward 60 years later to a journalist who is investigating it again, I guess, and she ends up going to see her grandmother, which ends up bringing up some information about the Turner family tragedy of Christmas Eve 1959. An epic novel that spans generations. Yeah, this is like 550 pages almost, which is big for a thriller. So yeah, I'm not going to read that for this, but I do want to read this in the future, but not for this challenge. Then we have I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Mackay. A successful film professor and podcaster. There's so many podcast things going on at the moment. Bodie Kane is content to forget her past, the family tragedy that marred her adolescence, her 4 largely miserable years at a boarding school, and the murder of her former roommate in the spring of their senior year. So it looks like the school's athletic trainer was convicted, and she wants to kind of forget it all, but she ends up going back to the school to teach a course there, and she begins to wonder whether the right person was convicted, essentially. So it sounds interesting, but honestly, I don't think it sounds as interesting as those other two. This feels just typical kind of thriller, I think. Then we have All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. A black sheriff, a serial killer, a small town ready to combust. So it's about someone called Titus. He is the first black sheriff in the history of Sharon Country, Virginia. And there's only ever been 2 murders apparently in like the last decades or so. Oh, a year after his election, a school teacher is killed by a former student, and the student is fatally shot by Titus's deputies. So this looks like it's kind of like a small town brewing into something big. And as he investigates the shootings, it looks like there are more stuff going on that has been hidden away basically in this small town. So that doesn't sound bad actually. It does sound quite interesting. But again, I'm more interested in the other two, I've got to say. Then we have The River We Remember by William Kent Kruger, another historical one. It's set in 1958 in a small Minnesota town. There is a murder of the most powerful citizen. So apparently, I was going to say it's a mayor, but apparently it's a very wealthy landowner. Found floating in the river, shot dead by a shotgun. Investigation of the murder falls on a sheriff. Oh, okay. So it looks like there are rumors saying that the person who killed him is a Native American World War II veteran who recently returned to the town with his Japanese wife. So it's going to be very like racism focused, I think. And the sheriff is investigating it. Yeah, again, it's like mysteries of the past and stuff. So it sounds okay, but honestly, I think again the other two are more interesting. Then we have What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. I feel like I've been hearing a lot about this one recently as well. I think it was maybe like a Literary Dead book club pick or something. Naomi Shaw used to believe in magic. 22 years ago, she and her 2 best friends, Cassidy and Olivia, spent the summer roaming the woods, imagining a world of ceremony and wonder. They called it the Goddess Game. The summer ended suddenly when Naomi was attacked. Miraculously, she survived her 17 stab wounds. Christ. And lived to identify the man who had hurt her. The girl's testimony put away a serial killer wanted for murdering 6 women. They were heroes. But now it turns out that decades later, they have kept a secret worth killing for. Oh, it's going to be about what really happened in the woods. That sounds really interesting. Then we have The Villa, which I actually wasn't aware was a mystery. I thought this was just like a fiction book. Oh, it's a gothic suspense set in an Italian villa with a dark history. So it's about these 2 women called Emily and Chess who were childhood friends, but by their 30s their bonds had been strained by demands of their adult lives. So when Chess suggests a girls' trip to Italy, Emily jumps at the chance to reconnect with her best friend. So they go to this villa. Oh, basically at this villa in the past, it was rented by a rock star, and he invited a bunch of people, and it looks like it ended with his murder. As Emily digs into the villa's complicated history, she begins to think there might be more to the story of that fateful summer in 1974, that perhaps Pierce's murder wasn't just a tale of sex, drugs, and rock and roll gone wrong, but that something more sinister might have occurred. Oh, and apparently whilst this is happening and she's investigating, more stuff is going down between Emily and Chess. So I feel like it is potentially that Chess is like related to one of those people. That's what I'm guessing. That's my theory. I don't know why I'm theorizing, because I don't think I'm going to pick that for this video. I do want to read it, however, but I don't think I'm going to pick it for this, because again, the others sound slightly more interesting. Okay, then we have Karen Slaughter, After That Night. I've heard of Karen Slaughter, but I've never read from her before. 15 years ago, Sarah Linton's life changed forever when a celebratory night out ended in a violent attack that tore her world apart. She's now remade her life, she's a doctor, she's engaged to the man she loves, and managed to leave her past behind her, until one evening on call in the ER, everything changes. Sarah battles to save a broken young woman who's been brutally attacked. But it looks like the assault is linked to her assault. That sounds like it's going to be very heavy on female assault, and I'm not crazy on that. Okay, then we have another Frida McFadden. I didn't know she had 2 books in this list. Very cool cover, I have to say. It is called The Co-Worker. That is a distinctive cover. You see her every day, but do you really know her? 2 women, an office filled with secrets, one terrible crime that can't be taken back. Dawn's shift is strange. At least everyone thinks so at VIX, the national supplement company, where Dawn works as an accountant. She never says the right thing, she has no desk, she has no friends, and she's always at her desk at precisely 8:45 a.m. So when Dawn doesn't show up to office one morning, her co-worker, Natalie, who's beautiful, popular, the top sales rep, is surprised. Then she receives an unsettling anonymous phone call that changes everything, and it turns out that Dawn wasn't just an awkward outsider, she was being targeted by someone. So she's trying to work out who the killer is and who is the real victim. One thing is incredibly clear, someone hated Dawn's shift enough to kill. Sounds interesting. I'm not going to read it, obviously, because I don't want to read 2 Frida McFadden books in the same video, but I am, however, going to add it to my want to read. Then we have Happiness Falls by Angie Kim. I feel like I've also heard about recently. A father goes missing, his family's desperate search leads them to question everything they knew about him and one another. Both a riveting page-turner and a deeply moving portrait of a family in crisis. So it's a biracial Korean-American family in Virginia when, the father goes missing. The daughter, Mia, isn't initially concerned when her father and younger brother don't return from a walk in a nearby park, but then only her brother returns. The only witness is Eugene, who has the rare genetic condition Angelman syndrome and cannot speak. I've heard of that before. Yeah, they're trying to find him before it's too late, it sounds like. Does sound interesting. It has got a lower rating though compared to the others. But I'm going to add it to my TBR, even though I'm not going to pick it for this video. On to the last line. We have Alice Feeney, Good Bad Girl. I have not heard great things about this. So 20 years after a baby is stolen from a stroller, a woman is murdered in a care home. The 2 crimes are somehow linked, and a good bad girl may be the key to discovering the truth. A 2-year-old woman called Edith, who's been tricked into a nursing home, and someone called Patience who works there but is lying to Edith. Edith's daughter won't speak to her, and someone new is about to knock on her door. The woman must solve a mystery with 3 suspects, 2 murders, and 1 victim. It sounds confusing, honestly. Yeah, I'm not bothered about that one, I think. Okay, last 3. Don't Let Her Stay by Nicola Sanders. Someone inside your house wants you dead, but no one believes you. That's quite funny. So it's about a woman called Joanne whose family is perfect until her husband's daughter shows up, who hasn't spoken to her father in 2 years, but it sounds like basically the mother thinks that Chloe's out to get her. It's a domestic thriller. That sounds very white people problems, not gonna lie. Okay, next, The Leftover Women by Jean Kwok. A family drama and riveting mystery about the ferocious pull of motherhood for 2 very different women. So it's about a woman called Jasmine, who just arrived in New York City from a Chinese village on a desperate search for the daughter who was taken from her at birth, another female casualty of China's controversial one-child policy. And then there is also another woman called Rebecca, who is a publishing executive. Oh, and she is the mother of the daughter, it sounds like. Okay, well, that's that. figured out already, I guess. This does sound interesting, actually. I don't know if I want to read it. I'm gonna leave that one, I think. And then we're gonna go on to the final one, which is another maid story. It's The Maid's Diary by Laureth Ann White. Kit Darling is a maid with a snooping problem. This still has quite high rating, actually, in comparison. 12.24. She always likes to look into her client's stuff. Oh, and the couple probably wanted to kill her because she finds out something that she probably shouldn't have found out. Oh, yeah, there she goes. She goes missing. The homemaiders are gone, the maid is missing. The only witness is an elderly woman next door who woke to screams in the night. And she was the last person to see the maid alive. I've already got a maid story in this. I don't want another one. So that means that we are between What Lies in the Woods, which is the girls who play the Wicker game, Bright Young Women, and Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. This feels more cozy. Yeah, it's a cozy mystery. And I want something I think that is hopefully going to be along the same level of tension as the other two. So I think I'm going to veto that one. And I'm thinking I'm more interested in Bright Young Women. So I think that means, yeah, I'm going to pick Bright Young Women as my third choice. That then means that my three that I'm going to be reading for the mystery and thriller is The Housemaid's Secret, None of This Is True, and Bright Young Women. Now let's move on to Memoir and Autobiography. Of course, the winner is Britney Spears, The Woman in Me. I haven't read it yet. I really do want to read it. I've got the audiobook for it. So, yeah, I'm definitely going to be reading that. No questions. Yeah, no questions, basically. Oh, and the runner-up is Prince Harry Spare, which I don't really want to read, I'll be honest. I'm just not super interested in the royal family. Like, maybe if you were American, you'd find this super interesting, but I am from the United Kingdom, and I just don't care. I feel like this is not going to be a good book. So yeah, this is about Prince Harry. He is the second prince in the United Kingdom. I don't quite get how he's done a memoir, though I feel like it's probably very shocking and controversial that he did one in the first place. Yeah, I can't say I'm bothered, so I don't even know if I'm gonna read this. I think I'll give it a try, but I'm gonna have a third option, I think, on hand, because I just don't think I'm gonna like this, and if I have to drop it, then fair. I'm not gonna force myself to read it. So I am gonna actually end up having 4 picks for this, because just in case I do drop Spare. The third one is Page Boy by Elliot Page. I've already read this. I thought it was fine. I thought it could have been better, to be honest. I think I rated it like a 3-star or maybe a 4-star. 3-star, yeah. I just didn't think that there was honestly enough content for it to be a memoir at this stage of Elliot Page's life. Is kind of how I felt. This is not my favourite. Then we have a novel by Maggie Smith. Dame Maggie Smith, you could make this place beautiful. So thankfully, I don't have to go into too much detail about these because these are just people. So yeah, this is, I assume is indeed Dame Maggie Smith. Let's just double check. Oh, it isn't! Oh, I was totally wrong. Okay, this is a totally different person. Who is this person then? She writes poems and essays? Damn, okay, I really thought this was Dame Maggie Smith. I don't really know anything about her then in that case. So yeah, she's a poet, explores the disintegration of her marriage and her renewed commitment to herself. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have a look at her options. Okay, then we have Counting the Cost, a memoir. See, my issue is that I don't really know a lot of pop culture people and celebrities, so I don't know half of these people. So this one is about a traditional Christian family that captivated the nation on hit show 19 Kids and Counting. Okay, yeah, so she's one of the daughters, apparently. So it's basically about her and husband and how it was to be in this crazy family, which does actually sound quite interesting. Okay, Beth Moore, All My Knotted Up Life. It literally doesn't really tell me anything about it here. Other than that she's a Christian. She's a teacher and a prolific Bible study author. I'm not interested in that, to be honest. Paris, the Memoirs. This is Paris Hilton. I've actually heard this is quite good. Obviously, Paris Hilton basically has like a big stigma around her for being kind of dumb, like that dumb blonde. But apparently it looks like this was more of a facade, and she's actually very intelligent. So I've heard good things about this. So I might actually pick this one. Okay, so have a quick check. We've got Woman in Me. We've got Prince Harry. I feel like Paris will be my third choice, and then I'm going to pick one of these others to be potentially what is the second choice for Spare. So we have a Pamela Anderson autobiography, sorry, these are memoirs. So yeah, she was famous for being in Playboy, that kind of thing. And I think she had the sex tape, was that a thing? I don't really know a lot about her though, to be honest. And I feel like I've already quite heavy on the female blonde celebrities, so I'm not gonna add another one to the list. Hijab Butch Blues. Ooh, okay. A queer hijabi Muslim immigrant survives her coming of age by drawing strength and hope from stories in the Quran in this daring, provocative, and radically hopeful memoir. Ooh, okay, that sounds quite interesting. Although I feel like I won't understand a lot of the Quran stuff because I haven't read the Quran. But I'm intrigued by that one, so we're going to put that as another option along with counting the cost. The In-Between. Unforgettable encounters during life's final moments. Okay, this is about euthanasia. So it's about Varlos, who was raised in a strict religious household but began questioning her beliefs in high school after the sudden death of a friend. And she became a nurse, which I guess means that she saw a lot of end-of-life care. That's a bit depressing for me, so I'm not going to pick it. Thicker Than Water, Kerry Washington. Is this the one I'm supposed to know? She is a director, producer, and activist. Oh, there's not really much about her on her. She's not obviously a reader normally anyway. Let's just Google her, I guess. She is an actress. Oh, she's very pretty. I've not seen any of the things that she's in. Oh, apart from School for Good and Evil. That is the only thing I've seen her in. Okay, yeah, I don't know her, so we're not gonna do that. The Many Lies of Mama Love. No one expects the police to knock on the $1 million two-story home as a perfect cul-de-sac housewife, but soccer mom Lara Love Harden has been hiding a shady secret. She is funding her heroin addiction by stealing her neighbor's credit cards, and now she's a ghostwriter. Interesting, but not someone I really want to read about, even though it was apparently an Oprah book club pick. Okay, The Witching Year, a memoir of earnest fumbling through modern witchcraft. It's about someone called Diana Helmuth is the writer, sorry. She is skeptical of organised religion and ends up starting to get into witchcraft. The result is 366 days of observation, trial, error, wit, and back spasms. But she discovers that despite all the rules and stuff, no one can agree on what are the right rules. So she kind of decides to look at the craft for herself. Okay, so she basically takes a year to study Wicca. Sounds kind of interesting. It's not got a massive amount of ratings though, but I'll keep it up for now. While You Were Out, an intimate family portrait of mental illness in an era of silence. So this is from a journalist, and it's about her growing up in the 60s. And, oh, okay, yeah, so her mother was hospitalized for anxiety and depression. And her father is prone to violence, children in the throes of bipolar disorder and depression, two of them who would take her lives. I'm not really interested in this depressing of that, to be honest. I like memoirs that are a bit more uplifting, and it probably is, but I don't really want to start off at such a dark place. How to Say Babylon by Sophia Sinclair. She's an author, basically, and it's a struggle to break free of her rigid Rastafarian upbringing. So it does sound interesting. Possibly more than Hijab Butch Blues. The rating on them. Oh, they're very similar. I'm gonna just leave it up there for now, I think. Okay, Minka Kelly, Tell Me Everything. Oh, I don't know who this person is. She's an actress. Fans know her as a spoiled rich cheerleader on Friday Night Lights or from someone in Euphoria. I have not seen either of those. It's just about her life, basically. I don't know her, so I have no interest. Becoming Free Indeed. My story, disentangling faith from fear. So this is someone called Jinga Duga Voila. She grew up in a very religious family. Oh, and she wrote a New York Times bestseller about the religious convictions. No, I don't think I want to read that. A Man of Two Faces by Viet Van Nguyen. So it's just about his life. Oh, he is a writer. Okay. Again, I don't really know him, so I feel like there's not a lot I can get from this at the moment. Yeah, it's about forgetting and memory and the promises America so rarely breaks. Does sound okay, to be honest, but I would rather be reading stuff about people I know about. Okay, last ones. They Called Us Exceptional by Prachi Gupta. An Indian-American daughter reveals how the dangerous model minority myth fractured her family in this searing brave memoir. So yeah, it's about the Indian-American community, and Gupta addresses her mother throughout the book, weaving a deeply vulnerable personal narrative of history, post-colonial theory, and research on mental health. Sounds okay. Has she written anything else, or is this her only? Yeah, this is her only one. So, oh, she's a journalist, okay, and former senior reporter at Jezebel. Don't really know much else about her though. So, the last one, A Living Remedy by Nicole Chung. I've heard of this one. It's a memoir of family, class, and grief. Korean, I believe. And it looks like... Oh, so she came from a very white hometown, went to a private university, and I guess is struggling to deal with being in the middle class. Oh, and the middle class is not what she thought it was going to be, basically. When her father dies at 67, Nicole feels deep grief as well as rage, knowing that years of precarity and lack of access to healthcare contributed to his early death. And then the unthinkable happens. Less than a year later, her beloved mother is diagnosed with cancer, and the physical distance between them becomes insurmountable as COVID-19 descends upon the world. So it's about family, bonds, hardship, tragedy. It does sound good, but it also sounds extremely depressing. Oh, okay, yeah, she's also an author. So she's written some books before. I'm gonna veto it again because I don't really know much about her. I feel like I would get so much more from these ones that are like authors if I actually know who they are. So that brings us to 4. We have The Witching Year, Hijab, Butch Blues, Counting the Cost, and How to Say Babylon. I feel like maybe I should read this one because I don't know much about Rastafarian upbringing, but I think I'm more interested in one of these others. Remember, this is the backup. So, to be fair, I don't need to pick. I think I'm just going to have these as options. I'm going to have a look and see what is available to me, I think. I want to take it up from the library if I'm gonna, so I might just see which are available. And then whichever are, I will put them as my backup for spare. But I think I'm most interested by The Witching Year just because I find Wicca stuff interesting. I am intrigued by Counting the Cost, but it just feels like it's just very white, basically. So I'd be a bit more interested in reading one that is a bit more about minority groups. But yeah, I'll have a look. But in the meantime, I'm definitely going to be reading The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. And I will read Paris the Memoir, and then I'll try Spare, but I really don't think I'm going to like it. So I have options, basically. So that is it, I guess. You will find out once I actually start blogging which one I pick. If I did indeed swap Spare out, we'll see. And we'll commence reading, I guess. Okay, so quick update. I've actually had a bit more of a think about it, and I think I've decided that honestly, Paris the Memoir doesn't sound like it's as important of a read as some of the other ones I was considering. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap out Paris the Memoir for either... No, I think I'm going to read Hijab Butch Blues. I think it's actually going to be my third choice. And then I'm going to actually I'm not going to have Counting the Cost as an option because, again, I feel like it's just maybe not that relevant. So instead, that means I will have the Jamaican Memoir and the book about witchcraft as my other option for if I don't like Spare. I feel better about those options. It feels a bit more like I am just not reading all about white women, to be honest. So yeah, that is the new plan. Hello, so an update because I have got copies of pretty much all the books now for this part of the project. So let's go through the my memoirs first. In fact, I did manage to find a copy of The Woman in Me by Britney Spears at the library. I'm actually going to be reading this via audiobook though, rather than via the library, rather than physically. Just because I've already got the audiobook and I know some of it is actually told by Brittany, so I do actually really want to listen to her in her words. So I have this one, very excited to finally get to it. Prince Harry is almost available via BorrowBox at the moment. I'm going to listen to a chapter or two and see if I'm vibing, and if I'm not vibing then I'm going to pick up one of the other ones from the library, and then the other one is arriving. In fact, the other one is actually waiting for me to pick up from the library at the moment. And then for the thriller, I ended up actually just picking up The Housemaid's Secret quite cheap from the works because they were selling this and the newest one that's just come out, which is called The Housemaid is Watching or something. At the time of me filming, I haven't actually read the first book in the series, but I will have read it before I actually do read this one, don't worry, to know what the deal is with it. I guess I'll find out at the end if I like this series enough to carry it on because it's still going. I also picked up None of This Is True by Lucy Jewell. I actually borrowed this of a friend who had it on a shelf and very kindly lent it to me. And then the last book, which is Promising Young Women? this book, I've already got by audiobook, so that's how I'm going to be reading that one, although I may pick up a physical copy as well, just to kind of read in tandem a little bit. So yeah, that's all the books, just waiting for one or two more to come in from the library, but I guess I can just get going with this then. I don't know what I'm going to start with next, probably one of these. We'll see. I'll update you and you'll see what I'm reading, I guess. Hello, a very quick update. The first update of the video, actually. I have started reading Brittany's memoir, The Woman in Me. I wasn't intending to start this like as soon as I did. I was kind of thinking of reading one of the other memoirs first. But I was actually just really in the mood. I was kind of feeling a bit slumpy with the books I was reading. Like, I just wasn't really vibing with the book I was reading by audiobook, and so I wanted to change it up and listen to something that I kind of knew I was gonna get invested into. So I started the audiobook for this and I'm really loving it so far. I'm maybe an hour or two into the audiobook at the moment. I kind of just had it on whilst I was travelling home from work, and then I was playing some video games later on in the evening because the Power Wash Simulator is free trial at the moment on Switch, and I was like, this is perfect for audiobook because there's no music whatsoever in that game. So I just kind of put the audiobook on in the background, and I was like really interested in it, and I was having really good time with it so far. So I'm very happy to say that I am enjoying it a lot at the moment. I don't really have much else to say in terms of like the actual story. It's just very kind of not necessarily relatable, because I don't think I've definitely have not had a life at all like Brittany's, but very emotional. I'm very kind of invested in her story, and I've got to say I love the amount of emphasis that she is putting on her passion for music. Like, I'll be honest, I don't really have a lot of knowledge about Brittany other than like I've listened to some of her songs and I've seen some of like the press stuff around her, but she was never like one of my favorite artists. But this is such a human story that she's telling, and you can't help but like feel for her. And I also love that she's not kind of like making herself out to be like a saint or perfect or anything like that. I feel like she's being very honest. Yeah, it's very easy to listen to. She actually narrated the author's like note at the beginning for it, but it's just there's somebody else who is narrating the majority of the book, because some of the things are just like a little traumatizing for her to like relive doing the audiobook narration herself. But I think the audiobook narrator is very good. It's giving the right kind of vibe, and I can almost believe that it's Brittany that I'm listening to. So yeah, having a really good time with that so far. I fully am expecting that it's probably going to make me cry towards the end. I'm currently just after the point where she's broken up with Justin Timberlake and she's a bit lost right now. She's going through it, and I feel like it's going to get very emotional before it gets better for sure. So yeah, really enjoying that. Some of the other books I'm still waiting for. Hijab Butch Blues. I don't know if it's ever going to come into the library. I'll be honest, I've ordered it and I feel like it's just not coming. So if that does happen, then I'll just read one of the other books that I've got, because I've got a few out extra. I've yet to start Spare. I'm still waiting for the audiobook to come available, and I think what I'm going to do is, because I'm just really not sure, I'm going to try a chapter of all three of the ones that I'm considering. So I'm gonna listen to the first chapter of Spare, see if I vibe with it. I really don't think I'm going to vibe with it. But then I also have The Witching Year by Deanna Helmer, so I'm going to read the first chapter of this, and then I do have How to Say Babylon waiting for me to pick up in the library as we speak, so I will read the first chapter of that as well, and then I'll decide which of the three I'm going to carry on with. And if Hijab Butch Blues just does not appear, then I'll probably just read whatever one is like the second that I ended up liking. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment. I'm having a good time so far. I'm hoping that I will enjoy all the other books in this video as much as I'm enjoying this one so far. So a very quick update here. I didn't really end up giving you much of a like how I felt like in the middle of reading the book, because it was actually a really quick read and I had a lot of time where I wasn't very well, and I basically just needed an audiobook for that. So I pretty much finished Britney Spears' memoir The Woman in Me in like a day. or something. It was really easy to listen to, and I really enjoyed it, I've got to say. I would probably give it a 4.5. I thought it was pretty well done, honestly. I got very invested into it. I can't say I found it relatable in certain ways, but I really appreciate the honesty that Brittany had with telling her story. I had a good time with it, thought it was well written, thought it was really inspiring, and I, at the moment, can see why it won, for sure. So I do have the other two memoirs that I'm going to be reading. I'm going to try Spare. I do have it via audiobook, which is apparently actually read by Prince Harry himself, and I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest. But yeah, I feel like I haven't given a great review of Brittany's book just yet. It's been like a week since I finished it because I've basically just been laid up with flu pretty much as soon as I finished it. So I'll try and come back to you with like some better thoughts and a better review, but just wanted to say that I did really enjoy it. I thought it was good, it had a lot to say, and I'll be moving on to a different one now. I'm probably going to try Spare just to see if I do like it or not. I'm still waiting for Jamaica to come into the library because we're being ill. Like, I missed my halt, so I had to reorder it again. But yeah, that's where we're at the moment. Hello, so another update. I started reading Spare by Prince Harry, and I got through maybe an hour and a half of the audiobook, and I just was not interested at all in what was going on. I kind of had a suspicion that was going to happen, and even though it was read by Harry himself, which I thought was good, that he actually did read his own memoir, like obviously it's also ghost written, which I'm sure Brittany's was as well, but I just did not have any interest for what was going on. So I ended up listening to what is essentially like the intro of him being a kid. It really wasn't anything that I was just kind of connecting to. There was a lot obviously about Princess Diana. It did deal, I got through the part where she passed and how like he kind of was dealing with it, I suppose, and how the family was dealing with it. But I'll be honest, like I just don't really have very much interest in the monarchy anyway, and I just really wasn't connecting to this book. So I did decide that I was going to not carry on. If I'd finished it, I suspect it would have been a 3-star. I really just don't think there was very much that was going to be giving me much to think about, which is kind of what I obviously want from this. I think memoirs should be something that you connect to and that make you think on a personal level, and this just was not working for me. So I did drop that one, which means I am going to be picking up my Spare book to swap it with. I can't remember if I already said this or not, but basically I just cannot get a copy of Hijab Butch Blues whatsoever. They're all like really stuck on long wait lists and stuff, or they just don't seem to be shifting at all. Like I think some copies may have been lost or something. So I decided that I'm just going to go with the one that I've already got a hold of, and that it might not be the best option of the ones that there are, but it's something that I think I'm genuinely interested in. So obviously I'd already had my other pick, which has arrived now. It is How to Say Babylon. I'll be reading this one next because it has reserves on it. It's not massively long. I'm actually really looking forward to this one. And then I do have The Witching Year, and this is what I'm going to read now in replacement of Spare. And this I think is just going to be like a really nice easy read. I like that this is literally a year and we're split into like days and stuff, and I think that's going to be really interesting. So yeah, that is what I'm doing now for the memoirs. Yeah. Just Spare was very much not for me. So I have been reading, well, I've been listening to, should I say, Bright Young Women via audiobook, and I'm actually really liking this one a lot so far. There's a lot of like meat to this one, it feels like, and it feels very different from other like thrillers that I've read, and I'm quite invested in it. The audiobook is very good as well, I have to say. I want to say maybe about halfway through at this point. It is proving to be quite an easy listen, and I'm not struggling to stay like invested in what's going on. At the moment, we're having the narrative split between Pamela, who is our head of the sorority house that got attacked, and I'm finding her narrative the more interesting one to me personally. I'm finding that one easier to tell what's going on because we kind of know where she's at, and obviously she's in the middle of the situation at the moment, and she's just met Tina, who is involved, who's a therapist, and is kind of looking into the case, and they're trying to catch who the person is because the police are just not really doing their jobs. It feels like they're not looking after the girls that are the survivors of this tragedy really at all, and they're kind of ignoring when Pamela like has information to give them, that kind of thing. So Pamela's kind of doing detective work herself now. She enlisted in the ex-boyfriend of one of the girls who passed, which I think was a massive mistake. But she's now talking with Tina, and then the other perspective, which we got this quite late in, and I'm wondering if that's why I'm maybe not quite connecting with it so much, is through Ruth. And she is I think she's recently divorced woman, and her father has passed away, and she has a very like toxic relationship with her mother, who she's currently staying with, and she's going to grief counselling, and it's there that she meets Tina. And from what I kind of gather, I think Ruth is going to be like a victim, but we're not there yet. We're still just kind of figuring stuff out, and I'm a little bit unsure of what is happening, to be honest. I'm losing the plot a little bit with what's happening on Ruth's timeline compared to what's happening on Pamela's timeline, but I'm very invested. I'm looking forward to carrying it on, and yeah, I'll most likely update you once I've finished, because it feels like at the moment we're just sort of getting like reveals and the mystery is unraveling. But I've got to say, like, I'm having a really good time with this already so far. It is already building itself up to be probably one of the better thrillers I've read, which I'm very happy about. Hello, I'm coming up with an update because I have finished listening to Bright Young Women. I still want to keep calling it Promising Young Women. Those titles are just too similar, and I really enjoyed it. There was a lot more to this than just the standard sort of mystery thriller. Like, that was obviously part of it. It wasn't really a mystery in the sense that you're trying to find out what happened. Like, you know what happens fairly early in, like that, basically, because you begin the story with the incident, and it takes a while to work out exactly what has happened at the incident and who was responsible. But once you do find that out, then it's very clear what's kind of gone on there with the actual crime. A lot of what this is about is actually very much about women's role, about how men treat women, particularly in areas such as the law, in marriage, in terms of like their sexuality, that kind of thing. Like back when this is set, which a lot of this is set in like the 70s, 80s kind of time era. So that was really interesting. I really enjoyed that it kind of delved a lot more into that than it, like, obviously the crime and the mystery, is a major part of the book. It's what links all the women together, essentially, is the person who does this crime. And Tina obviously links everyone together. But there's a lot more discussion and thought about that, which I thought was really interesting, and it added a whole another layer to the story. So overall, this was just really solid. It might even be one that I would actually like reread, and I don't tend to want to reread thrillers because it usually, like, once you've read it, that's it. There's nothing more you can get from it. But this has so much interesting discussions to say about gender, about how women are treated. So yeah, I think overall, it's definitely a 4-star for me. As it went further on, I gotta say, I think the story lost me a little bit. Like, I definitely was more interested in Pamela's story. I got a little lost in Ruth's story because it feels like for quite a while that Ruth's story, it doesn't necessarily relate to the main kind of plot that we've got going on with Pamela, other than that Tina is kind of like knows them both, and you know something happens to Ruth. So I got a little lost at times, sometimes with the audiobook as well. Like, it had different narrators and both were very good narrators, but if I'd like kind of blanked out for a few seconds, I wouldn't necessarily realise that we'd switched from Pamela to Ruth, and I'd get a little bit confused about where we were in the timeline. And although I did like Ruth's story, I just didn't find it quite as gripping. as Pamela's story and the stuff that, because that was obviously so much more geared towards volatile things that were happening. And Ruth's story was just more domestic. It was still good, but it just didn't interest me as much because it was a little bit further removed from the main plot of what the book was. So I think I'll give it a low 4. Yeah, 4.25, I'd say maybe. Like, it was brilliantly written. It was really good. I just think that it just kind of lost me a little bit in terms of some elements of the story. It could have been a little bit tighter, I think, with that. But overall, this was really good. I enjoyed it a lot. I highly suspect it might end up being my favourite of the 3 already, just because I think it had so much to say. It resonated so well, and it was just really interesting outside of just the actual thriller aspect of it. So yeah, that is my thoughts on that book. I'm going to be moving on to another one now. I'm undecided if I'm going to be picking up Lies They Never Told You. No, sorry. I'm undecided which one I'm going to pick up yet. I think I'm just going to see which one I feel like. But I do have the audiobook for this one as well, available at the moment from BorrowBox. So I might pick that one up first and then leave The Housemaid's Secret, which is the winner, obviously, to be the last one. So I really will be comparing these two against that one. Hello, so forgive the weird angle. I am currently in Hay on Wye. I've just arrived last night and I'm in the Airbnb here, which is gorgeous. But none of this is true, which I keep wanting to say is different titles, like Everyone Is Lying or whatever. I started this a few days ago via audiobook, and the audiobook just wasn't really clicking with me. I found myself starting to lose the thread of the story, which is a shame because I loved all like the podcast elements that it had in it. I thought that was really well done, but I was just starting to lose track a little bit where it was going. So I swapped to reading it purely physically, which I think was much better for me. So I'd read maybe about 70 pages via audiobook, and then I picked it up and I basically just read the whole rest of it yesterday, mostly on the train, and then I just finished it off last night before bed. And overall, I'd say I quite liked this. It did not live up to as being as good as Bright Young Women, I would say. Overall, I'd rate this one a 3.5, I think. Maybe slightly higher, but no, I think it's a 3.5. So this had me hooked, definitely, all the way through. I thought it was really interesting. It definitely took a few turns I wasn't expecting, but it also took a lot of turns that I was fully expecting. Like, not a lot fully surprised me with this one, but I thought it was very well told. I thought the pacing was really good. I did like Alex, who was one of our main characters, and I was about as wary of Josie, who's our other main character, about as much as you expect. And yeah, overall, quite liked this one, but honestly, I think it's one that I'm probably going to forget about quite easily. I'm not entirely sure if I liked the ending because of the ambiguity with it. I also kind of dislike that it basically tells you right at the beginning how many people die. I feel like that would have been like, it would have given a lot more tension towards what happened with certain people if you hadn't have known that people were definitely going to die. So that would have been a bit more of a shock, particularly with regards to a certain character who's very close to Alex. But yeah, I thought it had some interesting things to say. I don't think it had anything like as groundbreaking or as interesting as Bright Young Women, however, so I do have to rate this lower. But overall, honestly, like for someone who is very fussy with thrillers, I thought this was fine. I thought it had a good concept. I thought the podcast thing and the Netflix documentary was very fun. It kind of like meant that different characters got to come in every so often to like add extra thoughts to it. But yeah, overall, it was good. I think I'll probably read From Leaves to Jewel again, but this wasn't like a great book for me. It was just a good book. I had a good time with it, and I'm probably going to forget everything about it in 2 weeks, unfortunately. So that is the 2 thrillers of the 3, so that means I'm actually going on to the winner next, which I honestly have low expectations of, to be honest, after having read The Housemaid, which I didn't even quite rate a 3-star. So yeah, I guess we'll see where it goes from there. Coming at you with a bit of a library book haul because I went to pick up a bunch of holds. This was actually not one of the holds. I didn't know this book was out yet, but this is one of the authors at Yalk, and I wasn't able to get like a NetGalley arc for this, but I'm really intrigued by it. Young Gothic by M.A. Bennett. So yeah, I'll give this one a shot before Yalk. I picked up 2 books that are part of the next month's Goodreads. So we've got the winner of the horror, Holly, and the runner-up for the debut, Inkblood Sister Scribe. Then I also picked up James by Percival Everett. This is one of the shortlists for the Booker Prize. I was just kind of intrigued by it, to be honest. Don't really know a lot about it. Oh yeah, this is about one of the characters from Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. So yeah, this is probably like gonna win, so I figured I'd give it a shot. And then I picked up one more for Yalk, which is Girl Goddess Queen by B. Fitzgerald. Don't know if this is one I'm actually gonna like or not, but it's one that I keep seeing everywhere, and I'm just kind of intrigued at this point. And I feel like I've had enough of a break now from mythology to be okay reading some Greek mythology kind of thing. This is like Hades Persephone kind of thing. So yeah, that is my little library haul. I am also about at the halfway point, just over the halfway point now, on How to Say Babylon. I'm kind of reading it slowly because although I'm enjoying it, it's very heavy in terms of tone and emotion. It's quite dark and depressing. So I'm finding it really interesting. I am really liking it, but the tone is making me slow down with reading it a little bit. So yeah, next time I update you, I will likely have finished it. But yeah, I'm at this halfway point now, and Sophia is about 14, I think, at this point, so we're still very much kind of like in her childhood. Hello! So, I am coming at you with an update because I finished How to Say Babylon last night, and honestly, this one was just a really good read. I've actually had to reassess what I thought of the Brittany memoir, and I've decided to actually lower the rating of that one a little bit down to a 4.25 because this is most definitely a 4.5 for me. I think it just had so much impact, and I know I said at the beginning I was kind of struggling with it because I found it to be very heavy, and it is very heavy. It's kind of challenging to read, but I think once she got a bit older and she was in her teens and then coming into her womanhood and starting to get free and make out like what it was that she was going to do in her life, and there was still a lot of like hardships that she was going through, but I started to really love it a lot more from that point. Like getting more of that positivity in there, I think was really helped it. And yeah, this was really good, honestly. I would say for me personally, it has beaten the Brittany memoir. I don't really know what else to say with this. This is just so emotional, so impactful. It has so much to say, not just about Rastafarian culture, but also about women in that culture, women in Jamaican culture. Obviously, she spends a lot of her time in Jamaica. She does eventually go abroad to America, but it takes quite a while for her to get there. And she is like struggling for money. She's struggling with all these different relationships that she's building, particularly with like men. Obviously, as well as the abuse that's happening with her father and her relationships that she has with her mother and her siblings. But yeah, honestly, this was really good. I highly recommend it. Once we start, I think once she started writing poetry, I think as well, that is for me when the tone of the book took a shift, because that was when she started to find a way to express herself. And like basically like her first poetry, Knife, was it called Knife? No, sorry, it was called Silver, came at like her lowest point basically, and that really did feel like a shift. And that was when she started to be able to vocalize who she was. So yeah, really good. I really enjoyed it. Also, can I just say, she is stunning. Like, it was talking about her doing some modeling at some point. I'm like, damn, yeah, she is stunning. So definitely could see that she could have become a model. Also, her poetry, what little of it that we saw in this book is really good. I might actually check out some of her poetry, honestly, because I really enjoyed what we saw in this book. So yeah, that is my sort of review of How to Say Babylon. I definitely want to check out more by this author now. So I had the last memoir to read, which is The Witching Year by Diana Helmuth. I don't feel at this moment that it's going to top this, because this just had so much to say from so many different levels, but we'll see how it goes. I honestly think this is going to be more of an easy read. I think this is every single day that this goes through in a year. It may skip a couple of days. I'm trying to see if there's like an index or something that tells you. No, I don't think it does, unfortunately. So you're kind of just left to figure it out as you go along. But it does start prior to the year, because it's countdown to day one, telling my mum I want to be a witch. So that's fun. I feel like she's not a young author either. a young, so I don't think she's young when she does this. I think she's probably, I want to say she might be in her 30s or something. Yeah, 33. Diana Helmuth is searching for meaning, searching for purpose, searching for something to believe in. Skeptical of organized religion, she decides to try on the fastest growing self-directed faith in America, witchcraft. The result is 366 days of observation, trial, error, wit, and back spasms. So I feel like there's going to be some humour in this as well. I definitely think it's probably going to be a lighter read, but I like the idea. This is basically a diary of one year in a person's life. So yeah, I am looking forward to this one as well. I just do not think at the moment, given the emotional impact this had, that it's going to beat it. This is honestly an amazing book. I could see it being one that I would probably buy, although because of how heavy it is, it's probably not one I would be able to reread very often. But yeah, if I would say that if you are struggling with the beginning half of it, because there is such a theme of child abuse in that first half of it, that's what made it like a bit of a struggle for me. But once she gets a bit older, she's coming into herself, I found it much better to read from then on. So yeah, that is that. I'm obviously going to be starting The Witching Year, and at this point in the video I've also read the 2 thrillers, so I'm also going to be reading The Housemaid's Secret as well, which is the winner of the thriller category. I'm really dubious right now as to how I'm going to feel about this one. I kind of feel like it's not going to be amazing, so I'm going in with quite low expectations, which could mean that it actually surprises me and I love it, because it did win when the first book didn't win. So yeah, we'll see how that goes, I guess. Also, do you love my hat? I love my hat so much. Me after every 10 pages of this book. Really? 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 Nah. Ugh. No spoilers. But I'm not happy with this turn of events, and we've got our twist into part 2 of this book. It was cute the first time around in The Housemaid. It's not cute anymore when you're doing exactly the same thing! Seriously, how is Millie naive enough to get into this situation again? Hello, so I have finished the final book in the mystery and thriller category, The Housemaid's Secret. Much like with the first book, I read this basically over the course of like a day and a half. It was a quick, easy read. I wish I could say it was a good read, but it wasn't. So I gave the first book, The Housemaid, I want to say a low 3. Basically, I hated all of the first half of that book. It just felt like a Lifetime movie, and it was very predictable, and then the twist happened, and I liked that more because it did play with the expectations a little bit, and I had fun with it, and it was very gripping. And I will say this as well, it's a compulsive read. You are very like into it, but I had the opposite experience with this one actually. I found the first half of the book the more interesting part of it. It wasn't brilliant, but it was the part that I was enjoying the most. And then we got the twist, and I hated the last half of that book from that twist. I really didn't like where that went. I'm not going to say what it was, but I will say that I thought it was very predictable. It felt like Frida McFadden was just trying to basically one-up what she did in the first book. It felt like she was just doing a repeat, honestly, of the first book. So I was really hoping we were going to get something a bit more original, but it just really wasn't. You probably saw from, I don't know if I did any updates whilst I was reading it, but I just did not have a good time with this book. Like, literally every 10 pages or so, I felt like I was rolling my eyes at what things were happening. Like, oh yeah. So basically in this book, we return to Millie, who I was never very crazy on anyway in the first book. She is still painfully naive. She's dating a guy who we all know she's not particularly crazy on. And he's crazy on her, and it feels like she's leading him on a little bit. And part of it is just like, oh, I can't tell him my true self because of my criminal record. And really, I'm just like, girl, you just don't like him that much. So, yeah, I didn't enjoy that. I like that some time had passed between the first and the second book. I like that there was obviously stuff that had happened. But yeah, I just was not crazy on this book. I'm honestly kind of shocked that this was the winner of the mystery and the thriller category, because of the 3 books I've read, it's the worst. It's definitely the worst. I definitely liked it much less than this one. I'm not going to be carrying on this series, that's for sure. I know that the 3rd book in this series has just come out, which I think is called The Housemaid is Watching. I have absolutely no interest in, reading it. I went and checked out the plot summary for it just to see, and, more time has passed, but no. I think it's not getting great reviews either, to be honest. This still has a 4.24 on Goodreads, which I'm very surprised by. I gave this a 2.75. I think in the end, it was perfectly readable. Am I going to remember anything about this in a few days' time? No. I just really did not think this was well done in the slightest, to be honest. Again, it's an easy read. But like I said, I was just, I hated every single, twist and reveal, it felt like. Millie was frustrating. I think I hated every single character, actually, in this book, come to think of it. Yeah, no, there was not a single character in this book that I liked, even a little bit. Everyone was dreadful. I hated the twist. I hated that it just was really, it just killed Millie's character development. It just made her out to be really naive and stupid, and even the resolution wasn't amazing. So yeah, I was just really not a fan of this in the slightest. It's definitely my least favourite of all the 3 books that we read. I just, yeah, literally every time something happened, I was just like, really are we doing this? I was rolling my eyes constantly. I was laughing, but for all the wrong reasons, because I was just like, okay, I guess we're doing this now? Okay. So yeah, not my best experience with this book, unfortunately. I didn't love the first book either, but it was at least readable, and I'd hoped because this one had won, whereas one hadn't, that it was, really good in terms of its plot. But honestly, no, I think it just repeated itself a lot, but in a much worse way, because you're expecting it. And yeah, no, didn't work for me. So, I have read all the mystery thriller now for this category, so I guess I'll go through them all and tell you my final rating. I'm just double checking that there wasn't any others that I'd actually read. Yeah, so I read 4 for this basically, because I'd also read the only one left, which was the 3rd. The 3rd one in the overall ranking, which I also didn't love. So, I will say, obviously at the bottom for me, The Housemaid's Secret, 2.75, that has to be my lowest ranking for sure. Then, I think I would have to go with None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, which is the 2nd place one. I really just didn't think it was particularly, all the twists and stuff, I kind of saw a lot of it coming. I didn't think it brought anything particularly new to the table. I thought the podcast stuff was fun, but the storyline was just really not my thing. It was the whole, woman gets obsessed with other woman. trying to take over her life, people die because of it, that kind of thing. I think a lot of thrillers do this. And whilst I think this one was trying to be really different and putting in all these twists, particularly near the end, I just didn't think it was that great. I never really liked Josie at all. The other woman, I did like her. I've forgotten her name. And I appreciate they were older women. But yeah, I wasn't crazy on it. I gave this one a 3, I think. It wasn't amazing, to be honest. I was disappointed by it after I'd heard so much hype about it. Then for me, I would put the 3rd place in the awards as my 2nd place, The Only One Left by Riley Sager. I wasn't crazy on this one either, to be honest. I also only gave this one a 3-star. I have since read more Riley Sager, which I have enjoyed more. But this one just didn't really work for me, but I did think it had some more interesting stuff going on. Like, I thought all the stuff that was like the backstory of the characters was really interesting. It had more of an atmosphere, I would say, which I don't think any of those other 2 books had, because it is kind of like this gothic mansion, and like the mysteries of the characters were just genuinely more interesting, and that I was more interested in the characters in general, and I felt for them more. Like, even though I say it wasn't like great for me, I liked it more than None of This Is True. So that does mean that my winner, by a landslide, is what was actually the 6 rated in Goodreads with 34,000 votes compared to Housemaid's 86,000, which is Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. This was definitely the best one by far. It had the most to say. It was a little bit more outside of just sticking to a mystery thriller genre, and I thought it was really interesting. It certainly wasn't perfect by any means, but I had the best time with it. It is a book that I would probably actually reread, which is rare for me for a thriller. So yeah, that is my overall rating, I guess, of the thriller category. I'm literally just started like a few hours ago the final book for this video in the memoir category, which is Witching Year. I don't know yet, just I'm literally in a few pages in, so I don't know how good it's going to be. I really don't think it's going to be a winner, to be honest. I think I'm hoping I'll enjoy it, but I don't think, for me personally, it's going to beat the 2 I've already read. How to Say Babylon was really good. That is definitely my winner. Brittany's memoir was also pretty good, just not quite as long. Like, it didn't stick with me as much as How to Say Babylon is. I think this is going to be a very introspective book. I think there's probably going to be a lot of humor. Literally only over a year, so we're not getting like a whole person's life story, but I am appreciating that we're getting this like really focused snapshot from it. So I think I'm still going to find it really interesting. So my next update then will be when I actually make some progress on this, and we'll see how I'm finding it. Hello, so the first update from me reading The Witching Year. I'm honestly not very far in yet. I am 33 pages. I've literally only hit day 2. It's been alright so far. A little bit like wordy and over descriptive, but I'm not hating it. I just wanted to pop in because there was a really interesting bit that happened on my page 16 to 17 on the countdown to day 1 that I kind of wanted to mention. And basically, like, she's talking about how so much of what she's finding out about learning Wicca and witchcraft is basically that it kind of appropriates things from other cultures. And like, there's a whole thing in that you just take whatever seems to work for you. There's a bit here that basically says, most historians and a healthy number of witches agree that Gardner was not actually putting an ancient, mystical, earth-based religion out of the Dark Ages and into the light in 1950s England. Rather, Gardner was taking material from any source that didn't run away too fast. Mary Nesnick explains that 50% of modern Wicca is an invention bought and paid for by Gerald B. Gardner from Aleister Crowley. 10% was borrowed from books and manuscripts. The remaining 40% was borrowed from Far Eastern religions and philosophies, if not in word, then in ideas and basic principles. This seems to answer all my questions about how Indian Nag Champa incense, Italian tarot, the Chinese goddess Guanyin, and a tapestry of the Celtic Green Man all seem allowed to rub shoulders in the occult shops of America today. Perhaps this is the real meaning of witchcraft. Grab whatever resonates and doesn't run away too fast. This should be a fun, uncomplicated year. As a white person. I appreciate she's checking her privilege here, I've gotta say. And yeah, like, she's basically just gone on like her first like shopping trip, I guess, like on day one, because she just realized there's a big festival happening on day two, and she's like, shit, I have nothing prepared for this. Didn't realize that I need to be practicing. So she had to like run out to like whatever occult shop was still open, basically. And even then, like, she's like picking up like affimes, which is like ceremonial knives, and she's kind of like really anxious because she's found like a made in Pakistan sign in it, and then her partner's basically like, oh, it kind of looks like something that's in Sikhism. So she's just really conscious about like accidentally appropriating other religions and other cultures, because she is like a white American woman. Like, she has various European descent, she says, but like really she's just your average white American. So I appreciate that she's trying to do a due diligence there and like trying to be conscious about what she's doing. But yeah, it's alright so far. So I am, as you can see, much further in now. I'm over the halfway point. I'm still quite liking it, and it's actually really interesting because I didn't really know what this was going to be like going in, and it really is an awful lot about fear in some ways, like being afraid to do things and having the courage to have like belief in something, whether that is believing that yes, this is the right religion for me and I'm going to commit to it. So yeah, I'm actually quite enjoying it. I had one other quote that I wanted to mention and I think this is again not long after she does one of her first rituals, which kind of doesn't go that well. Basically, she's talking about how everyone seems to have all these different ideas about witchcraft and Wicca, and she's like drowning under all these different thoughts and opinions, and she's afraid to like share her own thoughts and opinions. And she says, I'm also starting to wonder, in a religion where everyone is encouraged to do everything differently, where and how does community happen? Atheism has never looked so sexy, I text Lauren. It's called the crooked path for a reason, she replies. Remember, your goal isn't to be the best witch, it's the most accurate witch to your spiritual needs and your journey. Honestly, this is going to be your challenge. You have to start working from a place that is about making some invisible teacher happy, which she does start to get through. She has some really good experiences later on. Like, it does seem like she kind of realizes that maybe it's not so much like the Wicca and stuff. Like, she is starting to connect to it, and she's starting to like believe and feel the power of it, but also she's starting to realize that it's making her just kind of think about stuff a lot more. It's making her appreciate things a lot more, because obviously a lot of it's to do with nature and gratitude and that kind of thing. So it's making her be a lot more aware of herself, which is quite interesting. Where I'm at now, she is just about to go on like this pilgrimage. We're at February now, so we're actually not too far off the end, because I believe this ends in August. So yeah, she's like over halfway through the journey, I think, now, and yeah, she's about to make like this pilgrimage with her sister to Salem, just because she feels like it's like one of the few the communities of witchcraft, even though she thinks it's kind of all very tourism-y as well. So she's deliberately not gone when it's like Halloween, because it's just tourists at that point. I guess she's trying to find some kind of meaning here that will help her connect even further with this faith that she is genuinely kind of connecting with now and beginning to believe in more so. So yeah, I have about 100 pages left. I'm probably going to end up finishing it tonight, to be honest. It's been a fairly easy read, like compared to all the memoirs. Like, I obviously found Brittany could be a little bit hard at times because of the emotional stuff. How to Say Jamaica was very hard because of how heavy it got. This has probably been the easiest to read. It took me a little while to get sort of invested into it, and it is, yeah, because we're not like having a whole person's life here, it's just like a snapshot of someone's life at one point in time. And I appreciate how, much like the other two, honestly, as well, how unflinchingly honest she is about her own faults. So yeah, I will next update you most likely once I've actually finished it, and then that will be all of the books read for this video. Hello, so I'm sorry for the bad lighting and me not looking my best. It is basically the end of the day. I am going away tomorrow for a couple of days, so I needed to do an update about the witching year before I go, so you're just going to put up with how I look like for it. I finished this today and I really liked it overall. I thought it was a really interesting take on like how someone dealt with religion who wasn't necessarily religious in like beforehand. There was a lot of introspection, which was really good. There was a lot of self-awareness, I guess, particularly with regards to embarking on a religion that is often so much about things that this person doesn't necessarily kind of connect with, like all the stuff about ancestors and that doesn't really click for her, and her finding what works for her, basically. Also a lot of talk about being mindful of other people's like heritages, their cultures and that kind of thing. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this overall. I thought it was pretty good. I think in terms of the ranking, I'm gonna give it a 4.25, I think, placing it around the same as Britney Spears' memoir. I feel like, because the thing is that I feel like it's maybe slightly above it, because I read Britney's memoir, The Woman in Me, like over a month ago at this point, and not much has stuck with me about it. And I feel like so much of what was going on here, because it was such a like snapshot of time, and it went so in depth about a lot of things introspectively, I feel like it's probably going to stick with me longer than The Woman in Me has. So I enjoyed all three of these memoirs quite a lot. But yeah, I think I did enjoy this one, surprisingly, just a little bit more than The Woman in Me. Part of that is because Britney's memoir just being as expansive as it is, it goes over such a long period of time, there's so many time skips. I feel like we do miss some things there that what she says is still like really interesting and really impactful, don't get me wrong, but I appreciated the more examinative view that we got in this, and that it was so much more in-depth. She was, I assume, writing this basically as it was happening or not long after, as she was kind of like thinking back on the events that have happened. And yeah, I just enjoyed like it being a kind of diary format and how that got you to know the person so much more, as opposed to like Britney writing things like quite far after the fact about a lot of things. So yeah, overall enjoyed this one as well. I'm glad to say I had a good time with all three of the memoirs. Okay, so I've got the list up now. I think there was only one other that I tried. I obviously already read Page Boy, which I rated a 3-star, I think. I didn't like that as much as I was hoping. And I did DNF Spare. I haven't read anything else on here, although there's definitely ones that I would be interested in reading, I think. Just as an example, I would be quite interested in reading Paris's memoir, just because I've heard it's really interesting. Jab Blush Blues, I still want to read that. I'm still disappointed that I couldn't actually get a copy of that one. A couple of the other ones, potentially, but I think I did read the ones I was most interested in, to be honest. So for going in the ranking, there are 5 books that we're ranking for this one. We have the second place, Spare, which had 71,000 votes. I'm putting at the bottom. I DNF'd it. It just wasn't for me. Unfortunately, I just personally don't have much interest in that topic, so it could have been good. I'm not saying it's a bad book, it just was not my kind of thing. So that is the very bottom of the category. Then we have Page Boy by Elliot Page. An interesting readable memoir, I thought, but I just felt that Elliot Page is just not old enough to have written a whole memoir to be as good as perhaps it could be in like another 10 years, essentially. That was kind of my thought on that. It was fine. I found it interesting, but yeah, it wasn't as good as I feel like it could have been. So that was the third place one, sorry, it was Page Boy. Then I am indeed gonna go with the winner, Britney Spears, The Woman in Me, which had 132,000 votes. Still really good. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It really got me. And the funny thing is that like I'm rating these 3 memoirs that I've read, and all of them were 4 stars. All of them were really good. They're just it's a slightly different rating, which I think is just really down to impact and my personal kind of interest and the impact it had on me, I think, when reading it. So yeah, The Woman in Me, 3rd place, still very good book. Definitely would recommend it. I thought it was a really interesting read, and the audiobook's really good for it as well. 2nd place then is going to The Witching Year by Diana Helmuth. Thought it was really interesting. I feel like it's the kind of book that you possibly do need to have an interest in Wicca and spirituality to really get anything from it, or yeah, just something that you're curious about. I don't think it's something that would work for anyone, so even though I'm rating it higher, it's a very personal higher rating, whereas I think Brittany's memoir probably would be liked by basically anyone that reads it. And then that does mean that the top rated memoir that I read was How to Say Babylon by Sophia Sinclair. I think this was most definitely the most emotional, most impactful. It had the most to say about a lot of things, not just like one thing that a lot of the other books only had to say about. And yeah, this was a hard read. I will definitely say that. It is a challenging read, like getting past all the childhood stuff. This does deal with trauma, much like Brittany's memoir, but it also deals a lot with child abuse, and that is quite heavy. And obviously also like learning a lot about a different religion, which maybe you're not too familiar with. So yeah, I really recommend that one. It's really good, but yeah, it is a hard read, I would say. So that is all the memoirs. I guess all I have to do now is decide which of the 2 genres that I pitted against each other I think worked better for me. And I think it's got to be memoirs. If we look at the rating, I definitely did enjoy at least one of the thrillers that I read. The other 2 were just kind of okay, but they weren't boring, and I still had a good time reading them. Like, I enjoyed every single book I read in this blog, like, in different ways, whether or not it was just because it kept me hooked, because it was quick moving and it was a fun read, which most of the thrillers were, but then we did get Promising Young Women, which was really good. And it's interesting because both of my winners for the category, Promising Young Women and How to Say Babylon, as well as both being high 4 stars, both of them were basically kind of thinking outside the box in their genre, because Promising Young Women, basically, like, it was supposed to be like a thriller, a true crime kind of thing, but it had a lot to say about women's place in society, particularly in that time period, the patriarchy, that kind of thing. So that was really interesting, and it was just a lot more to it than in the other thrillers that I read. And also in How to Say Babylon, there was a lot more to it than it just being the story of someone's life, because it was so much more like an examination and a reflection of the Rastafari culture for a woman who was grown up in it. So yeah, both of those really interesting, those 2 little connections that they have as being like my favorites. But yeah, I enjoyed reading both of these genres a lot. Like, memoirs did have the edge. I did enjoy all 3 of the memoirs more than I enjoyed the thrillers, I would say. But overall, pretty decent reading. I'm not upset at all about having read any of these books. I mean, maybe I'm a little upset about having read the second Housemaid book, but I will not be continuing that series on, that is for sure. So that is it for this video. Next time around, we're going to be doing all the very exciting genre matches of horror versus debut novel. So you'll be seeing that video coming up very soon. And as always, stay safe, stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!